Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Into the Hive Mind. It's been a very long break, but to be totally honest, I've had so many giant life things happening, moved, had a kid, all sorts of big things, and I finished up 9th edition not playing Tyranids. I played AdMech at a few tournaments, had fun with some Rise of Dragoons, but 10th edition's coming, Nids are the new bad guy, and we just got the index leaks today, so figured I'd make a video about it, talk to you guys. Very excited for Tyranid rules. The army's looking super fun, super fluffy, and based on the index, obviously we have not seen points yet, but the internal balance honestly seems phenomenal. Every unit that I look at, I can't think of anything that I can't see some kind of use for, so that's phenomenal. Few data sheets that are just gone, unfortunately, but that's all right. I think it's worth it, and when a codex comes out, we'll probably get even more new stuff and new rules. So first off, let's just start out. I'm going to go through this whole index document, just kind of going through our army special rules. First off, we've got Synapse. Now, Synapse, obviously, 6 inches of Synapse monsters. We all know what Synapse does. It used to make us fearless. Now, instead, we are rolling 3d6 for our Battle Shock. Again, Battle Shock is you're going to be rolling 2d6, and you need to equal or beat your leadership value. Otherwise, your objective control goes to 0, you're -1 to hit, and if you fall back, you lose a third of your unit. So having Synapse to prevent that is definitely nice, although it is a nerf from previous Synapse where we used to be completely immune to morale. So 3d6 is nice. Unfortunately, it looks like our leadership values are lower across the, well, worse across the board than other factions. So I'm not sure how great this is, but it's unfortunately worse than the previous one, but Synapse is still very cool, very fluffy rule, helps us against Battle Shock. Shadow in the Warp is our other army special rule that honestly is... so obviously there's not a psychic phase anymore, so Shadow in the Warp used to make your opponents -1 to cast, but now that they're not casting anymore, Shadow in the Warp had to be completely redone. So they're now going more for the fear and the terror aspect of Tyranids, which is super cool. But Shadow in the Warp is once per battle in either yours or your opponent's command phase. You can unleash the Shadow in the Warp, and your opponent's entire army takes a Battle Shock check. Now, this is good, not great. There are a lot of cool tricks you can do with this. What people were originally theorizing was you make your opponent have to Battle Shock check their entire army, and then anything you might make your opponent lose out on an objective because it's done in the command phase before you score. If you reduce their OC, their objective control, to 0, if they fail that Battle Shock check, then they might lose control of an objective. While that's true, unfortunately there is just the 1 CP count as having passed, which your opponent can definitely do just to ensure they hold on to an objective. So what I think a cool use of this is to be instead is you just have a hyper fast melee unit. Tyranids love those. You tag your opponent. Hopefully if you tag a whole bunch of things and they don't want to be in combat with you, you then pop Shadow in the Warp, and anyone who tries to fall back from combat is taking a Desperate Breakout, which is going to kill a third of their units. So that, or on the flip side, just making, a third of your opponent's army -1 to hit for a turn. That's pretty fun. Again, you can do this on your turn or your opponent's command phase. So pretty fun, one-off little thing. I don't think it's going to be super impactful, but it is a nice additional little touch that Tyranids get. In addition to that, Tyranids are getting the Hyper Adaptations detachment rule. So I believe this, when the Codex comes out, we might get different detachment rules that we can swap in for this instead. But Hyper Adaptations is a super fun one to start out with, very Tyranidy. We just get to adapt to our opponents after seeing what their list is. at the start of the first battle round, you get to pick either Swarming Instincts, Hyperaggression, or Hive Predators. So Swarming Instincts is the anti-horde. You get sustained hits 1 against infantry and swarm units. Pretty good. Extra dice against lots of high model units is great. And definitely just a very good default. Your opponent is probably going to have at least some infantry in their units, in their army. But if they don't, then that means they're probably going to have an army full of monsters and vehicles, at which point Hyperaggression gives your army lethal hits against monsters and vehicles. This is going to be huge if your opponent is really teching into that. So if you're going up against Imperial Knights or Chaos Knights, your entire army just auto wounds on 6s to hit. Phenomenal. There's a lot of things we can do with this. Tyranids are not high AP. That is a problem that we used to have, and it is a problem that looks like it is here again. But this lethal hits is definitely going to help with that. Just overwhelm with dice. Very, again, bodies over bullets kind of Tyranid mentality. Hive Predators is a very fun one. If your opponent has a lot of key characters attached to squads, Hive Predators gives you precision on your squads whenever you score a critical hit. This comboed with a Tyranid stratagem that makes you critical hit on 5s. You could have an anti-character squad that's designed to just really try and roll a lot of 5s to then get to snipe out characters. Really fun. Another Tyranid strat is to basically swap a unit to have a different adaptation than the rest of your army, and I think that's where that's really going to come into play. You spend 1 CP, pop a unit to have the precision ability, and really try and kill a character. Super cool, super fun. So speaking of that, we then have our Tyranid stratagems have been released. Our first one is Rapid Regeneration. Really cool. This used to be heal D3 wounds to a unit. It's honestly so much better now. You're going to be using this stratagem all the time. So you use Rapid Regeneration in your opponent's shooting phase or in the fight phase after an enemy unit has selected you as a target. And your unit gets a 6-up Feel No Pain or a 5-up Feel No Pain if you're in Synapse. That's going to be a common theme throughout all of these stratagems. They basically have a weaker effect initially, and then if you're in Synapse, it's going to be a buffed effect. So definitely want that everything to be in Synapse, which is a good incentive. But yeah, 1 CP, 5-up Feel No Pain on a unit after you're targeted it's just Catalyst on steroids, and it's amazing. Next up, we have Death Frenzy. So this is Fight on Death on a 4-up for 1 CP. Now, this one's definitely interesting because it's, your unit, when it dies on a 4-up, you get to fight if you have not already fought. So this can be used on monsters and might be worth just going for that 50-50. Hey, you killed me, but I get to kill you back on a 4+. But obviously, the more models you have in a unit, the more that's going to even out the swinginess of this stratagem. If you're using it on a monster, it's 1 CP, 50-50 shot. But again, our monsters are pretty insane, so fighting on death could be extremely good, and it's awesome to just have that option in our back pocket. Next up, we have Adrenal Surge for 2 CP. You get to target up to 2 units in your army that are in Synapse range and are eligible to fight. If you want to pick a unit outside of Synapse range, then it's only 1 unit. But again, 1 unit in, 1 unit always. If you want to be in Synapse, then it gets a little buffed, and you get to hit with 2 units for Adrenal Surge. But what this does is in the fight phase, that's your 5+ to hit is a critical. So pretty cool. Obviously, anything where you can get sustained hits comboing with this is going to be phenomenal. I did not realize that was only in the fight phase. I was thinking that was shooting as well. So that's a bit unfortunate, but obviously Tyranids kind of want to be in combat, so not the end of the world. Next up, we have Overrun. It's back. It's been a Tyranid staple forever, at least since 5th edition when I started playing. But Tyranid Overrun, in the fight phase, just before a Tyranid unit from your army consolidates, so basically you pick a unit, and instead of consolidating 3, you can consolidate 6. If you are not within engagement range and you are within synapse, you can instead just make a normal move 6. So this is phenomenal. This is our hit and run. This is free movement up the board. This is run up onto an objective that's too far away to get to normally. Move up 6 inches and get into combat with something else. Just extra movement for a fast combat army. Overrun's phenomenal. After that, we have Synaptic Insight. This is done in your command phase, and I actually really like this one a lot. It's what I was alluding to with the hyper adaptations. In your command phase, pick up to 2 units from your army in synapse range or 1 unit outside of synapse, and they get to pick a different hyper adaptation to be active for them rather than the one for your whole army. So again, this is, you can give something sustained hits. If you picked lethal hits, you can give something the precision to try and kill some characters. Just really flexible, showing that Tyranid adaptation ability. Insanely good for 1 CP. And finally, we have Endless Swarm. This is also in the command phase, and you get to pick up to 2 Endless Multitude units in synapse range or 1 outside of synapse, and return D3 plus 3 destroyed models to the unit. We had this before, Endless Swarm, return D3 plus 3 Gaunts. It's the same thing, except now if you're in synapse, you get to do it to 2 units. Combo that with a Turvagon, and you can literally bring back like 20 Gaunts a turn. It's pretty insane. I like it a lot. All right, then we get to our enhancements. Now, I believe enhancements are going to cost points. You cannot put enhancements on a epic character, or a named character, and they have to go on a character. And you can get up to 3, but I believe they are point upgrades, if I read the rules right. Or they might be like you get 1 free on your Warlord. But I believe you can get up to 3, and to have multiple, you're probably spending points. So let's talk about these Tyranid enhancements. You've got Alien Cunning. This is redeploy. You get to redeploy up to 3 units after both players have deployed. So the interesting thing to note here is this says after both players have deployed their armies. So this does not say anything about after finding out who's going first. Otherwise, this would be an absolute auto take, in my opinion. It's still really, really good. You get to see how your opponent deploys, and if they've counter-deployed you, you get to redeploy 3 units. Really nice to have. Definitely a great back pocket ability. Would be a little better if it was after knowing who goes first, but we'll take what we can get. Next up is Perfectly Adapted. This is the Blood Games from Custodes. It's really good. It's your Tyranid model gets to reroll either a hit, wound, damage, advance, charge, or saving throw once per player turn. So you just get a free reroll on your character of whatever you want in each player turn. So you get to reroll a save in your opponent's turn, and you get to reroll anything else that you need in your turn. Obviously phenomenal. Probably best on a Hive Tyrant or walking or flying, but could be put on other things as well. Synaptic Linchpin is your next one. This just gives this guy 9-inch synapse. It's fine, but this is probably the worst one of the 4. Obviously synapse is really important, but we have cool new models to extend synapse if we need it. Next up is Adaptive Biology. This one is, in my opinion, the best one. Perfectly Adapted could also be really good, but Adaptive Biology is a 5-up Feel No Pain on the bearer. And if the bearer has less than its starting number of wounds remaining, then it gets a 4-up Feel No Pain. So you start off with a 5-up Feel No Pain. After you get hit once, you now have a 4-up Feel No Pain for the rest of the battle. Insane. especially on something like a Turvagon, something hyper durable already. Yeah, it just you're basically doubling the wound characteristic of a monster character, which phenomenal. So yeah, that's our enhancements, and now let's get on to the actual data sheets themselves, starting in the what would be the HQ section of 9th edition. We are now off to a bunch of characters, starting out with the big old Flyrant. This is our winged Hive Tyrant. Interesting to note, his movement dropped from 16 down to 12, so he's not moving quite as far as he used to. But with that big bump in durability across monsters and vehicles, we are rocking a big toughness 9, 10 wounds with a 2+ save on the winged Hive Tyrant. So 2+ save is really cool. He is toughness 9, as opposed to his walking version is toughness 10. So before, Flyrants were 3-up save and walking Tyrants were 2-up. Now they both have a 2-up, but the winged Hive Tyrant is toughness 9 and the walking one is toughness 10. Both of which are 10 wounds, so that's a little unfortunate because we actually lost some wounds. Not much to say there. It's just a nerf. Winged Hive Tyrants have been ever present since at least 6th edition, so I understand them being a little bit nerfed. They have Objective Control 3, so that's kind of the standard for a mid-sized monster tank, and a leadership of 7+. I'm probably not going to talk much about leadership. Again, we have our Synapse to be 3d6, and essentially if you're a Synapse creature or a lone operative, you're probably leadership 7, otherwise you're leadership 8. That's just Tyranid leadership. So weapons, again, this guy, he comes in with a Lash Whip Bone Sword and his Tyrant Talons. That's his feat. You will always have your Tyrant Talons to fall back on if you want to swap out your Lash Whip Bone Sword for a gun. Only gun options are Heavy Venom Cannon or Stranglethorn Cannon. Nothing huge to see here. You've just got the Heavy Venom Cannon profile is still D3 shots. Unfortunately, that's a nerf backwards from the flat 3 shots that it used to be. We're back to D3 shots. So super swingy anti-tank gun. Unfortunately, I think with D3 shots, this is probably just never going to see play again. But it does hit on a 2 because it's a Hive Tyrant at strength 9, AP 2 for flat 3 damage at 36-inch range. Alternatively, you can take your Stranglethorn Cannon, also 36-inch range. This is D6 plus 1 attacks. Ballistic skill 2+, strength 7, AP 1 for 2. So it's our Tyranid autocannon with blast. I actually think this is slightly better. The D6 plus 1 is far better than D3. Both guns do have blast. So blast in this new edition is you get an extra shot per 5 models in your opponent's unit, rounded down. So I guess that helps a little bit. But again, this is going to be very random, very swingy number of shots for a big gun. With a winged Hive Tyrant, I think actually you're probably just wanting to stay in the melee profile because you're fast and hopefully you just get up into combat. That melee profile with the stock Bone Sword Lash Whip that it comes with is twin linked. So twin linked in the new rules is reroll wounds. And with this profile, he would have 6 attacks with the Bone Sword Lash Whip, hitting on 2s, strength 9, AP 2 for flat 3 damage. And again, twin linked, re-rolling all wounds. Very reliable, just solid damage output. 6 attacks. Alternatively, you can elect to have just more attacks. If you were to swap the Lash Whip Bone Sword out for monstrous Scything Talons, those Scything Talons have the extra attack keyword, meaning that you get to make those attacks in addition to your Tyrant Talons instead of. So that would give you 4 additional attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 7, AP 2 for 2, which is the exact profile as your Tyrant Talons, your feet. Your feet are 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 7, AP 2 for 2. So if you elect for a gun, that's your melee profile, is 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 7, AP 2 for 2. If you like that profile, you can elect for Scything Talons just to make it 9 attacks at that profile. I don't think that's what you're going to be taking, but if you're looking for a more anti-horde, anti-marine kind of killer, that would be your best profile. He does have a 4-up invulnerable save, which is pretty cool. We've learned to love that on our Hive Tyrants. Can potentially really spike on those and make them just really frustrating to kill. Here is the best thing about Hive Tyrants, their abilities. Deadly Demise D3, they still explode for D3. He's a Flyrant, so he can deep strike. But both the walking and flying Hive Tyrant have Will of the Hive Mind. So once per turn, which is your turn and your opponent's turn, a friendly Tyranid unit within 12 of this model can use a stratagem for 0 CP, even if you've already used that stratagem this phase. Phenomenal for picking a unit to give Feel No Pain, phenomenal to give a unit Overwatch. Well, sorry. You can get Overwatch. You are not going to be able to do Overwatch twice because Overwatch has the stipulation that you can only use it once per turn. But even just free CP, like spending your 2 CP strats for free, phenomenal. That's what's going to make Flyrants and Walking Hive Tyrants really good, is they're just going to be able to give units free stratagems. The thing that's really good about the Winged Hive Tyrant is its psychic ability is Paroxysm. At the start of the fight phase, pick an enemy unit within 12, roll a die, and on a 2+, that enemy unit loses 1 attack. Loses 1 from their attack's characteristic, and that's obviously super good. Makes Paroxysm, once again, a very anti-melee psychic ability. The downside of this one is if you don't roll a 2+ and you roll a 1, you actually take D3 mortals instead. So that's a really brutal randomizer, and I don't think you're allowed to CP reroll that. So just please don't roll a 1, because that would really suck. But yeah, that is the Winged Hive Tyrant. He is a monster. He does have fly. He synapse, everything you would expect. And then that brings us to the Walking Hive Tyrant. He moves 8 inches, so a little bit slower than his older version, but not a lot. Again, toughness 10 with a 2-up save, 4-up invuln, 10 wounds. The nice thing about the Walking Hive Tyrant is he does get that leader ability, so he can attach to some Tyrant Guard to give him that durability. The Flyrant, unfortunately, cannot, so that Flyrant is really going to be kind of more of a cruise missile, one and done, throw him forward, and then he's probably going to just get shot and die. This Walking Hive Tyrant is a much more backfield support, hang out with the Tyrant Guard to be protected. He can take a Venom Cannon, or Stranglethorn Cannon, and then he has 1 set of combat weapons, whether you decide that to be the Lash Whip and Bone Sword, which is the same profile as the Flyrant, or more just, that's the only one you're going to take if you decide to go with a gun, because the other one is extra attacks. If you decide to not go with any gun for some reason, then you have your 6 attacks with your Lash Whip Bone Sword, plus 4 attacks with your Scything Talons. But what's cool about this guy is, again, he has that Will of the Hive Mind. Pick a unit within 12 in each turn to get a stratagem for 0 CP. And instead, his psychic ability is Onslaught. That allows you, it is a 6-inch aura of give all ranged weapons assault. Now, assault used to be you could advance and shoot at -1. Assault now is you can advance and shoot. Period. That applies to every single ranged weapon, which is so insanely good. This applies to your heavy weapons. That before you could, you were suffering a penalty for moving and shooting. Now you can advance and shoot these with no penalty if you're within this 6-inch aura. Again, just I cannot express how good this ability is. You can advance your exocrine and fire your exocrine at your opponent, and advancing it to get good angles, just insanely good. And this also applies to what we might not want to consider as ranged weapons yet, because we're still new to 10th, but your psychic shooting attacks, you can advance and shoot your psychic shooting attacks now with this ability. So I really think a walking Hive Tyrant is very much worth bringing if you have any kind of heavy ranged weapons at all. Because being able to advance and shoot that weapon is going to be really good. Again, this guy can attach to Tyrant Guard. Definitely something I would consider doing depending on points, but keeping him alive is going to be important. Finally, we have Swarmlord. Swarmlord got leaked pretty early, but he has the pretty much identical profile to the Walking Hive Tyrant in terms of defense and, well, everything. Movement 8, toughness 10, 2-up save, 10 wounds, objective control 3, same as everyone else in the Tyrant bracket. However, his melee weapon that he comes with are his Bone Sabers, which are twin-linked, same as the Bone Sword, but they're going to be 8 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 9, AP 2 for flat 3 damage. So you get 2 more attacks over the Lash Whip Bone Sword profile. Honestly, kind of unimpressive for being the Swarmlord. He does also get a Psychic Shooting attack, which is Torrent, so it auto hits. It's a heavy bolter, strength 5, AP 1 for 2 damage at 18-inch range, but being Torrent means it's auto hits, and it is D6 plus 3 attacks. So pretty cool psychic super heavy flamer. He explodes for D3. The cool things about Swarmlord is he also has his 4-up invuln, no shenanigans there. He does not blank the first attack. He does not have a 3-up in combat or anything like that. Just standard 2-up, 4-up. He can bring his Tyrant Guard to protect him. But his abilities are, at the beginning of your command phase, you get an additional CP. This is honestly super good. I don't know if it's better than just having free strats with the Walking Hive Tyrant, which is a little confusing. But having extra CP is going to be so good in 10th edition. So I do think it's very much worth bringing the Swarmlord. It's just very interesting that a Walking Tyrant kind of does the same thing. However, the other thing that Swarmlord does is the old Vect ability that Dark Eldar had. When your opponent uses a stratagem, you can elect that for the rest of the battle they have to pay an additional CP to use that stratagem. I think the combo here is going to be you combine that with the auto pass Battle Shock to make it where Tyranids want your opponent to be battle shocked all over the place. If you make it where it costs them 2 CP to auto pass that, it's going to be really good. Obviously, if your opponent has a really good other strat, you can hit that as well. The only other thing about Swarmlord is he gets a 9-inch synapse. So, depending on points, I mean, Swarmlord is obviously really good. It's just very interesting that he seems kind of just comparable with a Walking Hive Tyrant, rules-wise. He's not actually that different. But, I mean, kick-ass model, and always like playing him, so hopefully he does pretty well. Next up, we've got the Broodlord. Now, the Broodlord can, he is a leader, so he can attach to a unit of Gene Stealers. I think that's every time you bring one, that's what you're doing. You're attaching him to a unit of Gene Stealers. The Broodlord and Gene Stealers themselves come with a Scout 8-inch ability, so after deploying, once you find out who's going first, you get an 8-inch pregame move. Very nice. The Broodlord moves 8 inches, same as Gene Stealers do. He is toughness 5 with 6 wounds, a 4+ armor save, and a 4+ invulnerable save. Keep him alive pretty well with that 4-up invuln. He does have only objective control 1, so he's just a single infantry guy. However, in combat, he has 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP 2 for 2. Now, what's cool about this is he has twin linked, so he's rerolling wounds, and he combines that with devastating wounds. So being able to reroll all of your wounds and any 6 does 2 mortals instead is a very cool thing, and that is going to be his ability for attaching to Gene Stealers is his Vicious Insight ability, that while he leads a unit, they all get devastating wounds. So he can only lead Gene Stealers, but Gene Stealers have their own little trick to try and reroll wounds, and any 6 to wound is going to do mortals instead. Really nice, really cool, just fun little blender unit that matches the Gene Stealer lore. The Broodlord also has Hypnotic Gaze as his psychic ability. So pick an enemy unit in engagement range in the fight phase, and they are -1 to hit. Pretty cool. Not bad at all. Just making them a little more durable in combat, which is where they want to be. And next up, we've got the Winged Tyranid Prime. This guy was also leaked pretty early, and I gotta say, this is kind of the one guy that's just a miss for me. I don't really know why we needed him unless we were going to get Winged Warriors, and I did not see Winged Warriors, so fingers crossed that those come out with the Codex, but we'll find out. But he's got his 12-inch movement because he's got wings. He is T5 with a 4-up save and 6 wounds, and objective control 1 because he is just an infantry. And then he doesn't have a gun. He's just got his talons, which are 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP 1 for 2. This is nice that all of our combat characters are at least hitting on 2s. Makes Tyranids actually reliable in combat, which is where we want to be. He is a leader. He can join melee Tyranid warriors, ranged Tyranid warriors, and gargoyles. I actually think Gargoyles is probably the best unit to attach him to just because of the Gargoyle move, shoot, move ability. I'll get to that later. But all he does when he attaches to a unit is give that unit sustained hits 1. So on ranged Tyranid warriors, I could see attaching him to that, but there's no reason for him to have wings at that point. So it's... Again, that's just kind of why this guy's a miss. I don't know if he's trying to be flexible, but instead he just ends up missing out on something regardless of what he does. But yeah, he gives his attached unit sustained hits 1. His other ability is he just auto gets the Death Frenzy strat on him. So if he dies, then on a 4-up, if he hasn't fought yet, he can fight. Sure, it's nice. Not much more to say about this guy other than, yeah, I think Gargoyles is probably the best thing to attach him to, just to have maybe some punch in your fast-moving Gargoyle unit in case they get charged. Next up is the Turvagon. I am actually very excited for the Turvagon. I was running a cool combat one throughout 9th edition, and I think it's back to play. It unfortunately does not spawn a new unit of Gaunts. It only replenishes existing units, which is unfortunate. That was kind of one of the iconic abilities of the Turvagon, but hopefully without that, it can now maybe drop in points and not be over 200. But we'll see. It might be at that 200 mark, though, because its durability is insane. It has its 8-inch move that it has always had. It's toughness 11, so pretty dang tanky. That's going to be wounding on 5s with Meltas and Plasma, and you basically have to have really dedicated anti-tank weaponry to be wounding this thing. It does have a 2+ save at 16 wounds. Its objective control is 5, so it is just a really big monster or tank. So because of that, it might be hitting that 200 point price level. Its guns are the same as what we're kind of used to. It's just got its Stinger Salvo, 24-inch range, 8 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 5, AP nothing for 1. And it can either have its massive Scything Talons or its massive Crushing Claws. Massive Crushing Claws might be worth taking now because the Turvagon does have 4 attacks base instead of 3 now, so that's a bonus. But the Crushing Claws are basically the equivalent of a -1 to hit. They are hitting on 4s, strength 12, AP 3 for D6 plus 1 damage. D6 plus 1 is unfortunately, we're going back to really random damage for Tyranids, and I don't like it. The D6 or the D3 plus 3 was so much more reliable anti-tank weapons, but I guess they're toning down the lethality. We're back to very swingy damage, D6 plus 1. Alternatively, you can keep your massive Scything Talons, which have a strike and sweep profile, either 4 attacks at strength 9, AP 2 for D6, or double that attacks at strength 7, AP 1 for 2. But that's not really why you're bringing a Turvagon. Instead, why you bring it is in your command phase, pick a Termagant unit within 6, and restore D3 plus 3 of them. The important thing of this is that is regardless of your Termagant loadout now. Beforehand, it would only give you Flesh Borer Gaunts. Now, regardless of what loadout your Gaunts have, you get to replenish them with the Tervigon. This is just nice because I imagine Termagants are going to be the same regardless of gun loadout. It looks like they've balanced them pretty evenly at this point. But the other ability that the Tervigon gives is it gives your Termagants within 6 lethal hits. So that's just really nice with these swarms of Gaunts. They can now damage big heavy tanks with the lethal hits ability. Not much more to say there. Very tanky, buffs Termagants. If you're wanting to go with the Termagant Carpet Swarm, you definitely want at least one Termagant in there. Next up is Old One-Eye, and I'm very excited for this model. Points, barring, as long as he's not ridiculously overcosted like he is in 9th edition, I would love to see Old One-Eye on the table. He moves his 8 inches. He is toughness 9 with 9 wounds and a 2+ save. His objective control of 3 because he's a monster. He is not Synapse, so he's leadership 8. But what's really cool about him, his typical Old One-Eye hard to kill, he permanently has a 5+ feel no pain, and he heals D3 lost wounds in each player's command phase. So if your opponent tries to shoot him, they don't kill him. Say they bring him down to 2 of his 9 wounds. In your turn, you're healing D3 back, and then assuming you don't somehow die in your turn, you will heal another D3 at the beginning of your opponent's turn, potentially regaining 6 of the 7 wounds that your opponent did in their previous turn, which is phenomenal. Especially because the coolest part about Old One-Eye is he is a leader. He can join a Carnifex unit, and I mean a Carnifex unit. Carnifexes now are finally units of 1 to 2, so you can have your little monster units, which is great, and Old One-Eye can join, making it 2 Carnifexes and Old One-Eye all as their own little unit. That's really fun because Old One-Eye is actually one of the characters that I think you want him to take the wounds instead of the guys he's attached to, because he does have that 5-up feel no pain and he heals wounds per turn. So he can just sit there and make a 3-man Carnifex unit just really difficult to deal with and make it where when you get in combat, you have all 3 Carnifexes hitting really hard. Alternatively, he can just go with shooting Carnifexes and really give them kind of that melee counterpunch in case they get tagged, and again, just provide that durability support for them. And if you're doing that, his other ability, Alpha Leader, really comes into play with some shooting Carnifexes, which gives them, as long as Old One-Eye is part of a unit, you get to re-roll all hit rolls. So Carnifexes are now, unfortunately, permanently Ballistic Skill 4. I did not see a way to improve that. But hitting on 4s, re-rolling everything, Old One-Eye is your man, and that is obviously a huge bump in power. So really excited to see Old One-Eye on the table again, as long as he is not, for some reason, ridiculously overcosted. All right, bringing us into Battle Line, or what we would assume would be Battle Line. However, Tyranid Warriors do not have the Battle Line keyword, at least not right now. We'll find out if that is a mix-up or not, but Tyranid Warriors are not Battle Line. You can only bring 3 units of them. They simplified Tyranid Warriors a lot. They just don't want the fiasco of Bone Swords being better than every other weapon choice, and why would you ever pick anything else? So instead, you get to pick, you have 2 data sheets. You've got your Tyranid Warriors with ranged bioweapons, and you have your Tyranid Warriors with melee bioweapons. Tyranid Warriors, they move 6 inches, they're T5, 4-up save, 3 wounds, objective control 2, and they are leadership 7 because they are, in fact, Synapse. The cool thing about them is they can fall back, shoot, and charge. That's a new nifty ability that they've got to make them that real flex pick, and just kind of solid all-around unit all the time. That Tyranid Warriors fill that kind of niche. Shooting profiles, once again, you're going to have 2 little guns and 1 big gun per 3 models, same as previous Tyranid Warriors. not much change in the profile at all. You've got your Barbed Strangler, 36-inch range blast, D6 plus 1 shots. They are hitting on 4s. Ballistic skill, there is no hitting on 3s with any warrior ranged weapons. But the Barbed Strangler is strength 6, AP 1 for 1. The Death Spitter and Devourer, or the Death Spitter is 3 shots at strength 5, AP 1 for 1. Devourer, 5 shots, strength 4, AP nothing for 1. Spine Fists are only 2 shots at strength 4, AP nothing for 1, but they are assault, pistol, and twin linked. Spine Fists are really good on Termagants. I do not think they're good on warriors at all. And then finally, you've got your Venom Cannons. We're back to D3 shots at strength 9, AP 2 for 2. Venom Cannons are fine. On warriors, I would not take the heavy Venom Cannons because the D3 shots is just not good enough. And then finally, with your ranged warriors, their melee weapon is just 5 attacks hitting on 3s at strength 5, AP 1 for 1. So the good thing is your shooting warriors still actually hit really hard in combat. 5 attacks each hitting on 3s with a point of AP is actually really solid. So solid, in fact, I'm hesitant to think that people would be bringing melee warriors at all, because what you gain for melee warriors, identical profile to the shooting ones, except obviously you do not have a gun at all, and instead what you get is you gain twin linked on your melee weapons, so you get to reroll wounds, you gain an attack, and you gain an AP. So you have 6 attacks hitting on 3s at strength 5, AP 2 for 1. If this was damage 2, I think melee warriors would be worth taking. Being damage 1, even with the extra reliability of twin linking them and gaining an attack, I think just having the option for a gun is better. What's also really interesting is the melee warriors do not get to fall back, shoot, and charge. Instead, they get to start of the fight phase, pick to either reroll hit rolls of 1 or saving throws of 1. While that's nice, fallback, shoot, and charge is just a lot better. I don't personally. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure why you would bring melee warriors with the current loadout, but I may be wrong. But ranged warriors, they seem fine. Very much a flex, just fill in what you need kind of role. Next up, we got Termagants. Termagants were actually the very first 10th edition data sheet ever released out into the public, but they are your standard 6-inch move, toughness 3, 1 wound. They are battle line, so they've got objective control 2, and they do keep their 5-up save that we got in 9th edition. They do not have a 6-up. They are leadership 8 because they're not Synapse. And they've got in combat their single attack hitting on 4, strength 3, AP nothing for 1. What you would expect from a Termagant profile. Their guns, they do look relatively balanced, where I could see taking all 3 different types. You've got your Flesh Borer, which is an assault weapon, so you can advance and shoot it without penalty. It's single attack at 18-inch range, strength 5, AP nothing for 1. So Termagants do not have any AP on any of their guns anymore. But if you want that strength 5, you're taking the Flesh Borer. Alternatively, if you want multiple shots, you've got the Devourer, which is your 2 shots at strength 4, AP nothing for 1, also 18-inch range. Or if you want utility, you go for the Spine Fists. The Spine Fists are assault, you can advance and shoot them. They are pistol, so you can shoot them in combat, and they are twin linked, so you get to reroll wounds. That being said, they are 2 shots at strength 3. I think, honestly, personal preference, I actually think the Spine Fists are the way to go, which is unfortunate because that means I am remodeling 120 Termagants if that's really the route I want to go. We'll see if I end up doing that. But Termagants with Spine Fists, just having that utility, the twin linked kind of offsets the fact that it's only strength 3 and the fact that they're pistols. Termagants are always just kind of going to be a screen for me. They get tied up in combat and become worthless. When you have pistol, they are not worthless. They still get their 1 melee attack and get to fire their gun in combat. And combine that with a Turbogon to give that strength 3 pistol lethal hits, makes them still very potent. The only other cool thing about Termagants is their ability Skulking Horrors. If once per turn, if an enemy unit ends a normal advance or fallback move within 9, you get to make a normal move up to D6 inches away. So you can just run away from someone trying to charge your Termagants, or if someone's trying to get a charge on something else and they end within 9 of you, you can move D6 inches to try and get in their way. Very cool utility role to just really mess with your opponent with your baseline troops. And I love that. I love that flexibility. I love that utility. Makes Termagants great. I think you want... I'm looking at 4 units of them with the Turbogon is what I'm thinking already. Hormagaunts. So obviously this is your other battle line troop. They are Endless Multitude, same as the Termagants, so you can use the strat to bring D3 plus 3 back. Hormagaunts move 10. The same profile otherwise, so they are certainly faster than your Termagants, especially with their ability Bounding Leap. They can advance and charge. Hormagaunts have always wanted this. They finally got it. They don't need Onslaught to be able to do it anymore. So moving 10, advance and charge, you've got your fast melee gone. The downside of that is they certainly took a hit in the melee profile, as you don't have really adrenal glands or anything like that anymore. So you're going to be relying on lethal hits to be hurting pretty much anything. Because these guys have 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, strength 3, AP 1 for 1. I didn't see any support to help make this get damage through other than your adaptive traits. So you're really going to be hoping on lethal hits or sustained hits and just weight of dice. But hopefully that means Hormagaunts are dirt cheap again. I'm hoping like 5-6 points. If they're much more than that, well, that's just going to be unfortunate. But moving on to our other Endless Multitude unit, we've got some Gargoyles. These guys move 12 because they've got wings. They do only have a 6-up save, same as previously, so their wings do make them a little less durable. But still OC2 as they are a battle line unit. Other than that, they've got their flesh borers, same as a Termagant. And then in melee, it's the same attack as what a Termagant has. It's just called Blinding Venom, but it doesn't actually do anything, which is unfortunate. Blinding Venom has always been a fun rule ever since at least 6th edition. So unfortunate that they basically just lost that entirely, but instead they have Winged Swarm. So this is jump, shoot, jump. In your shooting phase, after this unit has shot, if they're not in engagement range with enemy units, they can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. If they do so, they cannot declare a charge. So this is the only reason why I might want to include a Winged Tyranid Prime with the Gargoyles, is they can jump out, shoot something, go back and hide, and if your opponent decides to try and tag them in combat, the Winged Tyranid Prime kills them. Even then, I still think just having base Gargoyles is probably what you want, because I'm assuming a Winged Tyranid Prime is going to cost at least 70 points, if not more. If he's around 50, then sure, he's a cool unit upgrade for Gargoyles. And next up is the Toxicrene. Starting off with our big melee monsters now. The Toxicrene is the anti-infantry killer. All of our monsters did get a nice little durability boost, so we are looking at 14 wounds with a 3+ save and toughness 11. Those 14 wounds, 3-up save is very much going to be a commonality for most of our melee beasts, with a toughness ranging from 10 to 12. The Toxicrene moves 8 inches. That is also just kind of the standard for all of our melee monsters. With a OC control of 4, so I believe that means GW is considering the Toxicrene to be slightly bigger than your average monster or vehicle. So I would imagine points are probably in the high hundreds, probably like 180-ish. But this guy is going to be, again, anti-infantry, so he's got his massive toxic lashes that he can shoot or punch with which are anti-infantry 2+. Instead of poison 2+, or reroll wounds that he used to be, we are now anti-infantry 2+. Hitting on 3s, both shooting and in combat, strength 6, AP 1 for 2, 12 attacks in melee, 2d6 in shooting. But you're not really taking him for his combat abilities, you're taking him for his other abilities, such as Hypertoxic Miasma. This is going to be a 6-inch aura. At the end of your movement phase, roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 6 of him. And on a 2 or 3, that unit takes a mortal wound. On a 4 or 5, they take d3 mortals. And on a 6, they take d6 mortals. This is just a nice little chip damage that you're going to be constantly putting out every turn. With the random off chance of like sniping a character, probably going to happen once in the entire edition for you. But when it happens, it will certainly be memorable that you roll that 6 and then you roll another 5 or 6 and just kill a character with your Toxic Cloud. The other ability that he has is probably the real reason why you're taking him, though, his Grasping Tendrils. This guy loves free hugs, and so when he gets into engagement range, when an enemy unit decides to try and fall back on a 3-up, they must remain stationary instead, which is really nice to keep people locked in combat, and maybe you can hold on to something for your other melee infantry units to basically grab and try and stay safe. Unfortunately, the Toxicrane himself is no longer going to be safe because you can just shoot at monsters that are in combat with the new 10th edition rules, but he can still hold on to someone and still have at least a little bit of benefit from that. So very fun. Again, I'm guessing around the 180 mark, hopefully a little bit cheaper because he does not actually have a huge damage output. But moving on, we've got some Tyrant Guard. Now, Tyrant Guard got a huge durability increase, getting bumped up to Toughness 8. This is really good because your Tyrant Guard are going to be in units with your Hive Tyrants and your Neuro Tyrant, and they're all tougher than that. And with the changes to 10th edition rules, you're rolling against the unit's toughness, not the characters. So your Hive Tyrant, when he joins a unit of Tyrant Guard, your opponent is going to be wounding it as if it's toughness 8 now. So that's kind of a weird nerf that I think is only specific to Tyranids, where their bodyguards are weaker than the character that they're attached to. But we'll see how much of a difference that actually makes. But Tyrant Guard are toughness 8 with 4 wounds and a 3+ save. So unfortunately, their durability did go down with that armor save. But at least they're infantry, so it's pretty easy for them to get cover and go back to that 2+. The special ability that they have is they give the character that they're attached to a 5+ feel no pain. They do not get it themselves, but I think what that means, the strategy, obviously I haven't played that before, but if you have 3 Tyrant Guard attached to your Hive Tyrant, I think you're probably killing the first 2 Tyrant Guard, and then you start allocating attacks onto the Hive Tyrant, who is going to at least have that 5-up feel no pain. It'll be interesting for sure to see how that actually works out. In combat, these guys are pretty much exactly what they are currently. You've got 3 attacks each, hitting on 3s. If you're going with the Lash Whip, then they're Strength 5, AP 1 for 2 damage, and Twin Linked to reroll wounds from that Lash Whip. If you're going Scything Talons, you instead get 2 extra attacks at Strength 5, AP 1 for 1. Or you can go for the Crushing Claws, where you're going to be -1 to hit, so you're hitting on 4s, but you are Strength 8, AP 2 for 2. And they do have 4 wounds each, which is kind of nice, and you can take them in a unit of 3 to 6. But yeah, you're going to be taking those. I'm hoping like 30, 35 points a model. If they're much more than that, I really don't think they'll be worth it, especially with the lowering toughness of the guy that they're attached to. With the exception of our next target, the Neuro Tyrant, who is toughness 8, equal to the Tyrant Guard's toughness. So the Neuro Tyrant can attach to either Neuro Gaunts or the Tyrant Guard. That's very interesting because if it attaches to Neuro Gaunts, it becomes toughness 3, which is super fun. Again, Not really sure how that's going to play out, if that's going to be as detrimental as it sounds, but it definitely sounds pretty detrimental to me. So I do think you attach Tyrant Guard to this guy. He's toughness 8 with 9 wounds. He only has a 4+ save, but he makes up for it by having a 4+ invulnerable. And you're really bringing the Neuro Tyrant to have synapse everywhere, because that's what this guy does. He just gives you synapse wherever you need it. He moves 6 inches. He is a monster with fly. He has a psychic flamer attack. It's torrent. It ignores cover. 18-inch range, so that's actually pretty far. 2d6 shots at strength 5, AP 1 for 2. So it's just Swarmlord's flamer on steroids. And no, it's honestly, it's a really good shooting attack. But that's because it sucks in combat, and it has 6 attacks hitting on 3s at strength 5, AP nothing for 1. Not really what you want from a monster, but this guy is basically a monster version of a Zoanthrope, so who can blame it? But again, you're not really taking it for its combat abilities, you're taking it for its utility, and that utility is 3 different abilities. It's got its Synaptic Relays. In your command phase, select up to 2 friendly Tyranid units within 12 of this model's unit. Now that's important because if you do decide to attach it to Neurogaunts, that extends this bubble drastically. Picking a unit within 12 of any Neurogaunt that this guy is attached to. That's honestly the only use of Neurogaunts I can see, but we'll get there. But yeah, you pick 2 units within 12 of this guy's unit, and they are always considered to be in synapse range of your army until your next command phase. The other thing that this guy has is while he's leading a unit, you get +1 to hit, and if the unit is battle shocked, you also get +1 to wound. Trash on Neurogaunts because they're not doing anything anyways, but even with the +1 to hit and wound, they still won't do anything. But in a unit of Tyrant Guard, that actually +1 to hit and wound, not bad. Hitting on 2s is always nice. And his final ability is Psychic Terror. I think this is a really nice ability. As long as he's on the battlefield and you pop your Shadow in the Warp once per game ability, your opponent has a -1 to all of their Battle Shock checks. That's honestly huge. Any minuses we can make are going to be really big because any unit that fails is just a huge bonus for the Tyranid army. And it seems that is the way that they want Tyranids to go, so this guy just really helps make that happen. I would put this guy at probably the 150, 160 price point. We'll see how that actually comes out. Next up, we've got Lictors. Lictors have a huge glow up. I love these guys. First off, fight first and infiltrate. Just that by itself makes Lictors great. The other thing, 6 wounds, 6 attacks. Toughness 6. Huge glow up. That means Lictors are actually going to kill stuff now. They move 8 inches, and again with Infiltrator, that means that if you're putting them in the middle of the field and you go first, they are getting a turn 1 charge. Alternatively, they do have stealth and lone operative, so they cannot be shot unless your opponent's within 12, and even then they're going to be -1 to hit. They have a special ability, Feeder Tendrils. If they kill an enemy character, you get a CP, so reminiscent of your old stratagem, but they just get it built in. And they have Pheromone Trail. They get to use Rapid Ingress for 0 CP, which is really cool. They also get a 5+ invuln, so definitely way more durable than they used to be. Toughness 6, 6 wounds, 5+ invuln. Still a 4+ armor save, but yeah, these guys, massive glow up. And in combat, their 6 attacks are hitting on 2s at strength 7, AP 2 for 2. These guys are actually going to shred like a Marine unit, which is amazing. And they will definitely kill a character if they get into combat with a character. At least little ones. Certainly not any Primarch killers or anything, but I'm going to guess these guys are probably going to be in the 75 to 90 point range. Although I could see them being drastically cheaper, but I think it depends on how much GW values fight first. I value it a ton, Fight First is so much better in 10th edition than it is in 9th because you now start fights first with the person whose turn it's not. So if your opponent charges a lictor, that lictor is actually fighting first. So I value that drastically, and the combo of that and Infiltrate is just really good. So I want to run some lictors. They look phenomenal. And with that, you also have Death Leaper. He is an epic hero. You can only take one of them. He is still infantry. Basically exact same profile as a lictor, except he gains a wound. So he has 7 wounds. His attack profile is the same, although he does have precision on it, which, you know, is cute because you have a 1 CP generic strat everyone has for characters to get precision, but he at least makes it where you don't have to spend that. He also has Fight First, Infiltrate, Lone Operative, and Stealth, as well as the Feeder Tendril. If he kills an enemy character, he gains this CP. However, his invuln save is a 4+, so big bump in durability there. And he has another ability, Fear of the Unseen, a 6-inch aura where worsen the leadership characteristic of models in that unit by 1, and they have to take a battle shock check if they've lost, even if they're below starting strength. Not just if they're below half. So you deal 1 wound to a character, you kill 1 model from a unit, and Death Leapers within 6 inches, in their battle shock phase, they are taking a battle shock check. So really cool. If you're only going to take one lictor, you might as well make it Death Leaper. He seems really cool. Maleceptor. So this guy is going back to our Toxicrene profile in terms of moving 8 inches, toughness 11, 3-up save, 14 wounds, 4 objective control. However, this guy is Synapse, so he's got a leadership of 7+. Again, I'm going to guess this guy is going to be in the 180 price range. And he, beforehand, you know, he was ridiculously overpowered because he was splashing mortal wounds everywhere every time he successfully got a psychic power on a 7+. Instead, he just now has an insanely powerful psychic ranged attack. So this is going to be 18-inch range blast with D6 plus 3 attacks. Ballistic skill 3+, so he does unfortunately have to roll to hit, but at least he's hitting on 3s. At strength 10, AP 2 for flat 3. So the fact that you're getting anywhere from 4 to 9 attacks with this, plus more because it's blast, if your opponent is a big unit. At strength 10, AP 2 for flat 3, very strong ranged attacks. And again, if you're next to a walking Hive Tyrant, you can advance and shoot this thing. In addition to that, he's got his massive Scything Talons. You've got 3 attacks that you can sweep to go to 6, but you're hitting on 3s. At strength 9, AP 2 for D6 plus 1 with your 3 attacks, or strength 7, AP 1 for 2 with your 6 attacks. Decent for a combat monster, but, you know, nothing to write home about. This guy, his Encephalic Diffusion, that 6-inch aura that he has, still has it, but now it is enemies within 6 inches are -1 to hit, and if they're below half strength, they're -1 to wound. So a lot less useful, because instead of protecting the guys next to him, he is instead hurting enemies, which means he has to get there before he's doing this at all. He does still have his 4+ invulnerable save, though, so that'll at least help him get there. Really interesting that this guy kind of became a frontline combat shooting unit rather than a backline defensive piece. Next up, we go to Pyrovores. Pyrovores do explode for 1. Fun little side bit. They are toughness 6 with 4 wounds and a 3+ save. They are infantry with objective control 1. They are not Synapse, so they're leadership 8. They only move 5 inches. But the only reason you take a Pyrovore is because of their Flamer, right? So let's talk about that. Their Flamer is 12-inch range, ignores cover, torrent, and twin linked, so you are re-rolling wounds with its Flamer. It gets D6 plus 1 shots at strength 6, AP 1 for 1. So kind of a hybrid of the 2 different versions that it had previously. You're now getting D6 plus 1 shots at strength 6, AP 1, 1 shot, only 12-inch range. However, ignores cover and twin linked. So that's pretty cool. The other thing is its ability, Burning Spray, is the unit that you hit while shooting. That unit does not receive the benefit of cover for the rest of the turn, so you kind of melt the terrain that they're hiding in, which is a very fun, fluffy little rule. In combat, unfortunately, Pyrovores went way down. I had to laugh at their AP3 bludgeoning fists that they used to have. Unfortunately, those are just totally gone. They now have chitin barbed limbs that are just 2 attacks hitting on 4s, strength 5, AP nothing for 1. So these guys, I'm assuming you outflank them if that's still a thing. Otherwise, I don't know, they go by a walking tyrant and advance up and shoot their 12-inch flamer for a turn before they get tagged in combat. That being said, Overwatch is great with these guys. Overwatch, anything that has a torrent, you now want to consider for Overwatch, because that's just, if a unit moves within 24, spend a CP and Overwatch them. So essentially you can get a whole second shooting phase with those Pyroboards, which is pretty cool. Moving on, we're down to the Haruspex. Haruspex is not any tougher than a Toxicrene. We're still sitting at that 8-inch move, toughness 11, 3-up save, 14 wounds, objective control 4. So I, once again, guessing the 170, 180 price point. Yeah, this just seems to be, this is our Tyranid monster profile. 11 wounds, 3-up save, 14, or toughness 11, 14 wounds, 3-up save, move 8 inches. The Haruspex's Grasping Tongue is still precision. It can still snipe out characters, and it is boosted to a big old range of 12, which is great. Still just a single attack, but it does hit on a 3, strength 6, AP 2 for D6 plus 1 damage. So that tongue can actually really do something now. You really can just snipe out a character. You no longer are, hoping to finish off a wounded one. Hitting on 3s is pretty good, and D6 plus 1 damage is obviously phenomenal. And then in melee, this guy is your melee beatstick for sure. He has his Ravenous Maw for 14 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 7, AP 1 for 2. That's just going to mulch any squad. So yeah, any squad of guys is just getting eaten alive by this guy. And in addition, he has his Shoveling Claws, which have the extra attacks rule, which means you're getting both profiles. You get an additional 4 attacks with the Shoveling Claws, hitting on 3s at strength 14, AP 2 for D6 plus 1 damage. So low AP is kind of the name of the game for Tyranids, unfortunately, but any damage that does get through, this guy has the volume of attacks, which is great. And the other cool thing about him, he no longer eats guys and heals wounds, unfortunately, but instead he still has that Grisly Spectacle, which used to be a strat for him that was honestly terrible. Now in the new edition, with how new morale works, especially for Tyranids wanting to battle shock everything, Grisly Spectacle, every time this unit is selected to fight after resolving its attacks, as long as it destroys an enemy unit, every other enemy unit within 6 have to take a battle shock. So run forward, kill a few scouts, and everything within 6 of you has to take a battle shock check. Not bad for, assuming your opponent, this is turn 3, your opponent has already had to burn all their CP on auto-passing battle shock from your Shadow in the Warp last turn. Not bad at all. Again, Tyranids are going for battle shock everywhere. That's just another way to trigger that. So really cool, and again, just an absolute blender in combat. Next up, we got Venomthropes. These guys are not nearly as offensive as they are currently, but I don't think they ever should have been. They are T5, 4-up save, back to only 3 wounds apiece, and they move 6 inches with fly. Not bad for infantry. Losing that wound is definitely going to hurt, but we'll see. In combat, they've got their 5 attacks still at anti-infantry 2+, but otherwise they're hitting on 3s with strength 3, AP nothing for 1. So definitely a massive decrease in combat potential. But that's fine. That's not why you're taking these guys. You are taking them for their aura. Their foul spores are a 6-inch aura of giving out the benefit of cover. So they are giving a +1 save against ranged attacks for every unit within 6 inches. That includes monsters. So all of these toughness 11, 3-up save, 14 wound guys are going to have a 2-up save against shooting attacks as long as they're next to these venom thropes. In addition, anything that is not a monster is also going to get stealth. So they'll be -1 to hit. So really good. The whole reason you take venom thropes, 6-inch bubble of -1 to hit, right? It does not make the monsters -1 to hit, unfortunately, but it does give them the benefit of cover, which honestly I think is a trade-off. If AP does decrease across the board, +1 save is huge on monsters. But yeah, nothing else special about these guys. They don't keep guys in combat. They don't do mortals. They lost all of that stuff. So I'm hoping with that means they're going down in points, maybe 25 per model. Probably going to be 30, but 25 a model would certainly be a steal. Yeah, you can take them in units of 3 to 6. Then we've got Von Ryan's Leapers. These are the new guys that are obviously in the Leviathan box, and hilarious name, I guess. I just like calling them Ryans. I think that's kind of funny. But they are the hybrid between Hormagaunts and Lictors. They move 10 inches. They're toughness 5 with a 4-up save, 3 wounds apiece. And again, the same thing that Lictors have. Fight first, infiltrate, and stealth. So that's what's going to make these guys super shine. They can be taken in units of 3 to 6. I could see taking 2 5-man units in just about every single list. Because if you go first, they're going to put some hurt on people. Because they have 6 attacks per model. So a unit of 5 is going to be putting out 30 attacks at weapon skill 3, strength 5, AP 1 for 1. And again, because they have infiltrate, if you go first with that 10-inch move, you are guaranteed making a turn 1 charge, basically. They also have a 6-up invuln, which is cute. Might save a guy every now and again. And then their ability, Pouncing Leap. This unit gets to be targeted with a heroic intervention strat for 0 CP and can do so even if a different unit is heroically intervened. So super fun little ability there just to help out other guys that don't want to be charged. I think the way to play these guys is infiltrate them in again, 2 units of 5 in the midfield. Hope you go first. And worst case scenario, if you don't and your opponent tries to charge past you, well, just heroically intervene and punch him anyways. Next up, we got Neurogaunts. I gotta say, this is the most useless unit I have ever seen. They give out synapse if they're within range of synapse. They're your little synaptic relays. If these guys are more than 4 points a model, you will never see them. At 4 points a model, they're just going to be, models to put on the table. Because they have a 6+ save with a single wound at toughness 3, and they move 6 inches. They're not even battle line. They are at least Endless Multitude, so you can spawn some back. I really don't see a use for these guys other than maybe attaching it to a Neuro Tyrant. But again, hilariously, if you do that, your Neuro Tyrant is now T3. So, yeah. They don't have a gun. They've got their 1 Termagant attack that hits on a 4 at strength 3, AP nothing for 1. And apparently they can take a Node Beast upgrade. But based on this data sheet, that doesn't do anything. So we'll see. When the Codex comes out, maybe these guys will actually get more rules and have a purpose, or we'll get an FAQ that says what Node Beasts do. If Node Beasts give the unit Synapse innately, then I could see just running a 10-man squad of this if you are for some reason really light on Synapse. Otherwise, yeah, I really don't know why you would take these. They seem terrible. They're literally just bodies to put on the table. So if they're anything more than 4 points a model, they're garbage. All right, and then we are on to Zoanthropes. So obviously with psychic powers not being a thing anymore, they are returning to their 5th edition psychic shooting attacks. So they've got their Warp Lance. Zoanthropes, I guess first off, they are T5 with 3 wounds apiece and a 4+ invulnerable save. And they move 5 inches with fly. That's pretty much what you would expect. They're only objective control 1. They are leadership 7 because they're synapse. But basically, yeah, they've just got their psychic shooting attack. That's the only reason you're ever going to take them. 24-inch range. You can either go with the blast profile, which is D3 attacks with, imagine that, blast. They do hit on 3s. The blast profile is strength 7, AP 2 for D3 damage. Or the lance profile gains lethal hits. Lethal hits honestly goes down in value the higher your strength is. So the fact that this is strength 12 means lethal hits is just kind of meh. But you got it. It's a focused Witchfire of lethal hits, strength 12, AP 3 for D6 plus 1, but only a single shot per guy. I think, honestly, if you're taking Zoanthropes, it's probably 5 or 6 of them in a drop pod to fire that blast profile turn 1 at an infantry squad that you really want dead. Other than that, I don't see why you take these guys. They do have, I guess, they do have the Warp Field, which is a 6-inch aura of units within get a 6+ invuln. So if you want to attach them to a Gaunt Carpet list, they basically can fulfill the role of Venomthropes. You have the Venomthrope give them +1 save with the -1 to hit, and a Zoanthrope to give them a 6-up invuln. Though honestly, with that +1 save, if your Gaunts are being shot with AP 2 or better weapons, you're winning anyways. Or really, really losing, I guess. But the other ability that they have is while this unit contains a Neurothrope, who is just now the sergeant of the unit, if an enemy fails a battle shock check within 6 inches of them, they take D3 mortals and you heal D3 mortals. That kind of sucks. I'm not going to lie. That requires that your shooty psychic unit that is really bad in combat is within 6 inches of an enemy who then fails battle shock. Yeah, it's, it's cute, but if it's actually happening, something's wrong. Yeah, I'd say 5 or 6 Zoes in a pod, turn 1, deal damage. They're Desolators now, or Devastators. Next up are Gene Stealers. These guys move 8, so they do not have advance and charge. Instead, they have an 8-inch pregame move. I think if you're taking these guys, you're probably paying the points for a Broodlord to attach to them to give them devastating wounds. But you can take them in squads of 5 to 10. They have a 5+ save and a 5+ invulnerable save. There is no longer an option for a hardened carapace or anything like that. However, they are now 2 wounds a model, so that is a huge durability boost. We'll see if they end up having to pay the points for that, though. If they go up to like 18 or 20 points a model, I don't think they'll be taken. If they're in the 15 to 16 point range mark, I think that's where they should be with 2 wounds a model at T4. They are only objective control 1. They are not battle line. But yeah, they just have an 8-inch pregame move. They have 4 attacks per model hitting on 2s at strength 4, AP 2 for 1. And their ability, Vanguard Predator, gives them reroll wound rolls of 1. But if your opponent that you're attacking is on an objective marker, you get full rerolls to wound instead. And obviously, like I was saying, you want to stack that with the Broodlord to make that devastating wounds. And they just become blenders that are hopefully doing a ton of mortals. Definitely a unit worth taking. Will just depends on the price point. After that, we got Raveners. These guys obviously were huge in 9th edition and not much before that. I'd say they're still worth taking. They move 10 inches now instead of 12, so a bit of a slowdown. But they are T5 with 3 wounds and a 4+ save. So they are back to Tyranid armor, or Tyranid warrior armor, which is nice. Still objective control 1, taken in units of 3 to 6. No more taking 9-man units. They've got their thoracic bioweapon, shooting attack, just a 12-inch range, 3 shots, hitting on 4s, strength 4, AP nothing for 1. No more death spitters on these guys, unfortunately. They are basically just a single devourer per guy. But where they really shine is obviously in combat. You've got your Ravener Claws and Talons, which are twin-linked, so they are re-rolling wounds. And they have a whopping 7 attacks per model, hitting on 3s at strength 5, AP 1 for 1. So just that sheer volume of attacks at least strength 5 breakpoint with a point of AP means that these guys are just utter blenders. They will obviously shred any light infantry and probably do a number on marine equivalents as well. Their special rule, they do have Deep Strike, and then they also have the ability Death from Below, which is really cool. At the end of your opponent's turn, if this unit is not in engagement range of an enemy unit, you can remove it from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves. Now, I'm not entirely sure on strategic reserves, if that means they have to outflank. I don't think so, because they have the Deep Strike rule in their data sheet. I think they get to Deep Strike in again next turn. But yeah, they can, if they're not in combat, at the end of your opponent's turn, they can go back into reserve, which is really cool. So yeah, depending on points values, we'll see how those guys go, but very much a light infantry blender unit for sure, with a cool little pop off the board ability. Next up, we got Ripper Swarms. I don't even know if you're going to pay points for these, but you've got the Parasite who can spawn them, so that's fun. Ripper Swarms, they move 6. They are toughness 2. There is no longer a T3 floor in this game. So toughness 2, 6+ save, 4 wounds, leadership 8, and objective control 0. You are not going to be taking any objectives with these Rippers. They can take a Spine Maw pistol, which is just, they're 4 attacks hitting on 5s, 6-inch range gun. We'll see if that's a point upgrade or not, but it says all models in this unit can be equipped with it. We'll see if that ends up being a point upgrade. If it is a point upgrade, you're never going to take it, but if it's free, then cool. It's nice. They can Deep Strike, and then in combat, they actually have 6 attacks now instead of 4. They hit on 5s, only strength 2, AP nothing for 1. So yeah, these guys, they're obviously not doing damage. They've just got lots of wounds, lots of dice. But their cool ability, again, they Deep Strike, they tunnel, but while an enemy unit is within engagement range, they have their objective control. So pretty nice little way to, say, run into a knight and turn it into objective control 5 instead of 10, just because you touched it with the Ripper. Unfortunately, being objective control 0 means that you're still not flipping that objective unless you have friends, but fun, neat little ability. Next up, we got the Parasite Amortrex, which is probably going to be the only way that Rippers end up seeing the table, because the Parasite Amortrex is a character with Fly. Interestingly enough, he is no longer Synapse, which is unfortunate, but you are bringing him as just a kind of assassin character, and he flies 12 inches, toughness 5, 5 wounds, 4+ save. Does not have an invulnerable. So yeah, just toughness 5, 5 wounds. He is lone operative, so at least he can't be shot unless the opponent's within 12. He does have stealth, but he does not have any of the no rerolls against him or anything like that anymore. He does not have a gun, and instead, just in melee, he has his 6 clawed limb attacks hitting on 2s at strength 5, AP 1 for 1, plus his 1 extra attack with his mouth, which is anti-infantry 3+. But it hits on a 2, strength 3, so you really definitely want it to go into infantry because it's not wounding anything else. But it is AP 2 for 3 damage, and if it kills a model with its extra attack, then you get D3 Ripper Swarms within 3, which is pretty cool. So the other ability that it has is it itches, which is just start of the fight phase, pick an enemy unit in engagement range, and they have to take a battle shock. So that's kind of nice, because if they fail, they're -1 to hit, can't have strats used on them, and you just flipped that objective. So really cool that he can still flip objectives by himself and spawn Rippers. He still does what he did. Maybe not quite as efficiently, but still gets the job done. Then we have a Moloch. This guy is he's good again. Still 3-up save, 14 wounds, but he is only toughness 10 instead of 11. But he moves 10 inches to make up for it. Still objective control 4, so I'm going to guess he's probably in the 160, 170 range. He's got... obviously, Molochs are known for deep striking in enemy lines and dealing damage, so he still has his Terror from the Deep rule. However, he cannot show up any closer than 9 inches. He does a standard deep strike now, but his Terror from the Deep ability hits everyone within 12. Now, a 12-inch aura of doing mortal wounds when you show up is phenomenal, but keep in mind that you have to show up 9 away, so you're not actually hitting a ton of stuff with it. But the things that you are hitting on a 2 through 4, you're dealing D3 mortals to it, and on a 5+, you're dealing flat 3 mortals and forcing them to take a battle shock test. This gets really fun with Rapid Ingress, where he can just show up in your opponent's turn after they've moved everything and deal mortals to them and make them take a battle shock test when it's not their command phase. I think they can only auto-pass battle shock if it's in their command phase. We'll see. I don't remember. I might be wrong on that, but if that's the case, that'd be a pretty neat little way to sneak in a failed battle shock there. But all of that aside, the Moloch is actually good in combat now. He has his whopping 16 attacks like he did before, except now they're at a real profile. Hitting on 3s, strength 8, AP 2 for 1 damage. And then he has his extra attack with his mouth, which is anti-infantry 4+ with devastating wounds. So that means if you wound an infantry model on a 4+, you're going straight to mortals. This attack hits on a 3. It is strength 5, AP nothing, but flat 3 damage. So again, you're just really hoping you roll that 4+ and deal 3 mortals against an infantry unit. Really fun. I'm excited to see what people can do with him, especially with using Rapid Ingress. Speaking of which, we then go to the Trigon, and this is the true terror for Rapid Ingress. Trigon's same profile exactly, 10-inch move, toughness 10, 3-up save, 14 wounds, objective control 4. He also can deep strike, obviously. But his subterranean tunnels rule, no longer is he bringing friends, it's all about the Trigon now. His deep strike, he can deep strike outside of 3 inches instead of 9. If he does so, he cannot declare a charge that turn, so you're probably thinking, that sounds terrible. Why would I want to show up 3 inches away from the opponent and not make a charge roll with my Trigon? Well, because of Rapid Ingress, you do that in your opponent's turn when you can block charges with this, or you can just show up in a spot where you know your opponent can't reach you, and you now have a 10-inch moving Trigon on your turn guaranteed that can charge because it's now a new turn. But yeah, so this guy... If your opponent, for example, is getting into your backfield and wants to charge your Barb Gaunts, which are probably going to be in every list now, and you really don't want those guys to get tagged, you Rapid Ingress a Trigon in the way, and they have to suddenly go around a Trigon or be in combat with him. And let me tell you, they don't want to be in combat with him, because he has 12 attacks hitting on 3s, strength 9, AP 2 for flat 3 damage. Yeah, he just... packs a punch. That's going to kill so many things. His shooting attack is also cute. He's got his little electric charge thing, 12-inch range, 6 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 5, AP nothing for 1. But it has the Tesla rule of sustained hits 2. Again, it's cute. It's fun. I don't think it's worth spending the 1 CP to critically hit on 5s to get your super Tesla because it is only strength 5, AP nothing, but... could be fun. But really, this Trigon, the Rapid Ingress 3 inches away is what's going to make this guy absolutely insane. I love it. It's been so long since Trigons have been good, and they're some of my favorite models. Moving on, we are finally to Spore Mines. We got Mucolids. They are toughness 4 still. They do have 3 wounds still. They do not have a save. It's a 7+. They move all of 4 inches and are objective control 0. They are beasts, so they can go through walls. They have fly, so they can fly over walls and infantry. But they still do mortals if your opponent gets close. Importantly, they do not have a rule that says they cannot do actions, which would be hilarious if you're spawning spore mines. Mucolids and the regular spore mines, they have the same rules, just different profile. But yeah, they don't have anything that says they can't do actions. So I've heard some people kind of joking about the new gambits of just fire some spore mines into each table quarter at the end of the game and then hope you roll a 9 for your, 30 primary points or whatever. While hilarious, I don't recommend actually doing that. But I guess if you got no other out, could be funny. The other thing is there's nothing that says they can't charge. So these guys can move 4 and charge. And once again, if at any point an enemy ends a move within 3 inches of this model, or this unit ends within 3 inches of an enemy model, the Mucolids on a 2 through 5 deal D3 mortals, and on a 6 deal D6 mortals, and then the model is removed. And the little spore mines, same thing, except it's 2 through 5 is 1 mortal and a 6 is D3. However, they have one other rule. A bio minefield. Enemy units cannot start or end an advance move within 6 inches of this unit. So you can plop these guys down. Again, you can rapid ingress them, which is super fun with spore mines. And your opponent basically can't advance, which is kind of cool because they have to go through a minefield. It's fun, it's fluffy. I like that a lot. The regular spore mines have the same thing. Unit composition, the little spore mines are only 3 to 6, and the big spore mines are 1 to 2. So no more giant screening units. But we do get most of our spore mine shenanigans back. It's just been toned down a little bit, but at least we get to use them, which is fun. Next up, we got the Exocrine. This guy's a beast. His gun is insane, but he is toughness 10, still with that 3-up save and 14 wounds. That is apparently just our Tyranid monster profile. It is interesting that he's toughness 10, which is the weaker version, whereas before he was like T8 with a 2-up, but whatever. We're T10 with a 3-up save and 14 wounds, 4 objective control, movement 8. Standard Tyranid monster profile. Really, the only reason you're bringing an Exocrine is for his gun, and that gun is 36-inch range, blast, and heavy. So if you don't hit, you're +1 to hit, which is great because you're ballistic skill 3 to start, which means if you don't move, you're hitting on 2s. But even better about this guy is, again, if you have that walking tyrant within 6 inches of him, he can advance and shoot this weapon and still hit on 3s. Which is phenomenal because this is D6 plus 3 shots at strength 8, AP 3 for 3 with blast to get extra shots as well if you're shooting a big unit. Phenomenal profile to kill elite infantry, regular infantry. Just at strength 8, you're probably not destroying vehicles, but hey, if you're going up against vehicles, you hopefully have lethal hits as well. In combat, obviously he's trash, 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 7, but AP nothing, but at least it's 2 damage. The only ability that this guy has is his symbiotic targeting. It's no longer for himself. Now, after he shoots one enemy unit that he shot at, everyone else who shoots that unit gets to reroll hit rolls of 1. So, not bad at all. He fires tracer rounds with his giant plasma that probably obliterated whatever he was just marking. Next up, we got Biovores. Really interesting to see what they do with these guys. They are now T6, which is pretty cool. 4 wounds with a 4-up save. They only move 5 inches, only have objective control 1, can be taken in units of 1 to 3. They shoot out spore mines at 48 inches. They've got a profile that does devastating wounds with indirect fire and heavy and blast. Blast is actually what makes this really interesting because it is D3 shots, but with blast, indirect, if you're firing at like a 20-man squad, this is suddenly D3 plus 4 per Biovore. So that can get juicy really quick. They hit on 4s, which means indirect hitting on 5s, except they're heavy. So if they don't move, they're back to hitting on 4s, even firing indirect. And if they're not firing indirect and they're actually just able to see their target, they're actually hitting on 3s, which is better than Biovores have ever done. But their gun is Strength 6, AP 1 for 2 damage, and again, devastating wounds. So any 6 that you do is just going to do a flat 2 mortals, which is pretty cool. If you decide to not shoot and you want to create spore mines instead, you can still do that. However, it is only 1 spore mine per Biovore. It is no longer D3. So, but same rules as before. You can just pick a point within 48 inches of this unit. You do need to be 9 inches away from the opponent because spore mines can charge now. So, but hilariously, you can spawn a unit of 3 spore mines and then charge them in. I think, honestly, you probably just want to shoot at this point, unless you really have some serious chicanery that you're doing with the spore mines. All right, next up you got Carnifexes. These guys are, again, moving 8 inches. They are toughness 9 with 8 wounds and a 2+ save. So a bit of a change from the norm, but we are back to a 2+ save. They are unfortunately not -1 damage anymore and only 8 wounds. But with that 2+ save, if they're next to a Venom Thrope, they're going to have a 1+ save. And what makes these guys really shine is, again, they can be taken in units of 1 to 2, and they can have Old One-Eye join that unit. So I think that's where they're really going to shine, is a unit of 2 of them with Old One-Eye. They've got their standard, you can take tons and tons of stuff. They're very moddable. They do now explode for a single mortal. You can give them Crushing Claws to be 4 attacks hitting on 4s. Importantly, all of their melee attacks hit on 4s, though. So Crushing Claws are not -1 to hit for them. But it's 4 attacks hitting on 4s, Strength 12, AP 3 for D6 +1. Otherwise, you can just have their base Scything Talons, which are 6 attacks hitting on 4s at Strength 9, AP 2 for 3. If you elect to not have a gun and just go all scythes, you get 2 additional attacks. Or if you decide to go nothing but guns, your melee profile is 4 attacks hitting on 4s at Strength 6, AP nothing for 1. So you probably want to have at least 1 set of Talons. Your guns are what you would expect. You've got your Heavy Venom Cannon or your Stranglethorn Cannon, same as the Hive Tyrants. You do have your Devourers with Brain Leech Worms, which are 12 shots hitting on 4s at Strength 6, AP nothing for 1. Or you got your Death Spitters with Slimer Magnets, 6 attacks hitting on 4s, Strength 7, AP 2 for 1. You can absolutely just go 4 guns, so you're either 12 Death Spitters shots or 24 Devourer shots. I don't know. I think the way to run these guys is still what people have been running, which is probably Stranglethorn Cannon or Venom Cannon. I'd probably actually go Stranglethorn because Venom Cannon is back to D3 shots. Stranglethorn is D6 +1. So I'd go Stranglethorn Cannon and probably Scything Talons with these guys. But most importantly is their new ability, Blistering Assault. Every time an enemy unit shoots this unit, if any models in this unit lost 1 or more wounds as a result of that attack, this unit gets to make a Blistering Assault move. You roll a d6 and add 2 to it, and this model can move d6 that number of inches, but they must move as close as possible to the closest enemy unit. So someone shoots at your Carnifexes and does a wound, they get to move 3 to 8 inches towards the closest enemy once per turn. But super good. Obviously, your opponent does not want Carnifexes getting a free 8-inch move towards them. So that's really neat. But if you don't want to run regular Carnifexes, you've got the new Screamer Killer model. This guy is toughness 9 with 10 wounds and a 2+ save, moving 8 inches with objective control 3. Also explodes for 1 wound. This guy has his Bioplasmic Scream, which is an 18-inch assault gun with D6 +3 shots hitting on 4s, Strength 8, AP 2 for 1. So it lost some AP, but it gained shots, and it is Blast, so gains even more shots. And then it has the special ability Death Scream. If it hits a unit with this gun, they have to take a battle shock check at -1, which is phenomenal. Especially on a 18-inch range gun with assault on a model that's moving 8 inches. The threat range on that is huge. Screamer killers seem insane. We'll see how many points they are, but forcing battle shocks at -1 from, almost 30 inches away is really good. And if they do get in combat, they have 10 attacks hitting on 3s at strength 10, AP 2 for flat 3 damage. Yes, they seem truly terrifying, like what I think they used to be way back in 4th, apparently, before I played. Next up, we've got the Hive Guard. They've definitely changed in their role. Their Impaler Cannons are still indirect, but certainly been toned down in terms of damage. It is now just 4 attacks, strength 5, AP 1 for 1, hitting on 4s. They are heavy, so they will, cancel out the indirect as long as they don't move. But strength 5, AP 1 for 1 obviously isn't doing a ton of damage. The important thing about these guys is they have the new ability Defensive Stance, which is Overwatch on 4s. Now, in the 9th edition, that would be terrible and we don't care. But keep in mind, Overwatch can now be triggered if your opponent just moves within 24 inches. So essentially, these guys can get 2 rounds of shooting every turn with their indirect fire. And their Impaler Cannon did go back to 36-inch range. Again, depending on points, these guys are probably going to be drastically overcosted, is my guess. I would put maybe 20 points a model for these guys, just because 4 attacks at strength 5, AP 1 for 1, indirect, get rid of that AP 1. Even with a unit of 6 of these, they're killing a Marine when they shoot. It's not great. But, really cool with the little Overwatch ability. But I guess profile for you guys, they're toughness 7 now with a 3+ save and 4 wounds. So they're certainly durable. Moving 6 inches and objective control 1, leadership 8. The alternative is their shock cannon, which is 24-inch range with only 2 attacks, but it does hit on 3s, strength 7, AP 1 for 3, but it does have anti-vehicle 2+. So you very much can go the haywire route if you're really thinking you're going to run into a lot of vehicles. That anti-vehicle 2+ is obviously phenomenal, especially with that flat 3 damage. Just keep in mind that the gun is only 24-inch range with 2 attacks, and it is only AP 1. There are no devastating wounds or anything like that, so you're not mortaling vehicles. They will have probably at least a 4+ save against any of this flat 3 damage attacks that they make. So, I don't know. I think Hive Guard are still dead, but certainly they've got a unique option that they can take. Next up is the Tyrannifex. This guy is our big beastie. Going to be very difficult to kill. He moves 9 inches, toughness 12, 2+ save, 16 wounds, objective control 5. I'm expecting this guy to be the north end of 200 points, probably 210, 220, maybe all the way up to 240, depending on how good you think his gun is. Unfortunately, I don't think his gun is that great. They did preview the Rupture Cannon, which is heavy, giving it +1 to hit if he doesn't move, at 48-inch range. It is only 2 attacks, so that's not super great. Hilariously, though, if you give him precision and he rolls a 6, he can just one-shot a character, which would be hilarious. But I don't think you want to, go for that unless you have nothing else to shoot. But that Rupture Cannon is strength 18, AP 4 for 2d6 damage. The downside of that is if you roll Snake Eyes, you're still only doing 2 damage. Not much we can do about that. We are back to full swinginess, random damage Tyranids. But better gun is the Acid Spray. As we all know, Torrent is phenomenal, especially with new Overwatch rules. This Acid Spray is D6 plus 6 shots, same as it is in 9th edition, I believe, with 18-inch range. Keep in mind, if you've got a walking Hive Tyrant, you can advance and shoot this guy. And with that 9-inch move, that's a 27-inch threat range already, plus an advance roll if you want to go that route. But strength 6, AP 2 for 2. That's phenomenal on a flamer. So I think that's the way to run this guy. Alternatively, you could go the Flesh Borer Hive, which I know is always the meme pick. But it doesn't seem that bad. It is a heavy weapon, so it is hitting on 2s if he doesn't move. It has sustained hits 1 and is twin linked to reroll wounds. And it's a massive 20 shots at 24-inch range. So if you just want to drown your opponent in a weight of dice, you've got 20 attacks, hitting on 2s, sustained hits 1, and reroll wounds at strength 5, AP nothing for 1. What is really interesting about this Tyrannifex is it has -1 damage. Every time an attack is allocated to this model, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. I do believe core rules still keep that at a minimum of 1, but with a massive 16 wounds and toughness 12, reducing damage by 1, I don't think this guy's ever going to die. We'll see just how lethal the game gets, but he seems ridiculously durable. So we'll see how many points he is. I wouldn't be surprised if that -1 damage makes it where this guy's at like the 240 benchmark. Yeah, then moving on. We got the Tyrannocyte. We got our drop pod. Same transport rules as before, 20 infantry or 1 monster. However, that monster has to have 12 wounds or less, which basically means it's going to be a Carnifex, a Screamer Killer, or a Hive Tyrant. Everything else doesn't fit. Hilariously enough, everything else literally doesn't fit anyways because you still have to disembark wholly within 3 inches, and anything that is not those models has a base that's too big to fit wholly within 3. So maybe that's why they put that restriction. I don't know. But it's a drop pod. It can come in turn 1, has to be 9 away. Then you immediately have to disembark. You can't re-embark. It's toughness 9 with 10 wounds and a 3+ save. It is objective control 2, a monster with fly. It moves 8 inches. And it fires 5 shots, hitting on 4s at strength 5, AP 1 for 2. You can't upgrade its guns or anything. You get 5 shots. So it's not a ton, but it's actually going to hit, and it actually does damage. So 4 shots, strength 5, AP 1 for 2. In combat, it has 6 attacks, hitting on 4s, strength 7, AP 1 for 2. So it's actually going to hurt in combat as well. Not a ton, but it's actually going to, kill a few guys. Then we're going to the Crone. Aircraft are really interesting because as long as you have the hover rule, you can start on the table. You're just going to be in hover for the entire game. There's no more changing back and forth between turns. I think for Tyranid Flyers, that's totally fine. We probably want them in hover mode because that means they've got a 20-inch move and they can still charge stuff, and it's great. So the Hive Crone moves 20 inches. Toughness 9, 12 wounds, 3+ save. This guy's actually going to be hard to shoot down. And obviously with that 20-inch move with fly, he is super fast. If you do put him in hover mode, he loses that aircraft keyword, which is fine. I think we actually want to lose that. He still has his drill cannon, which is now a 2d6 flamer at 12-inch range, strength 6, AP 1 for 1. That's going to be great. He has his 8-shot stinger salvo. Cool. His tentaclids are now anti-vehicle 4+ with devastating wounds. So every wound roll of 4+ is going to go straight to mortals against vehicles, which is 4 attacks hitting on 3s, strength 7, AP nothing for 2. Its special rule is Airborne Predator, +1 to hit against any unit that has fly. And in combat, he's got 4 attacks hitting on 4s, strength 7, AP 1 for 2, plus a single attack with his spur. Hits on 3s, strength 10, AP 3 for D6, and anti-fly 2+. He actually is going to kill in combat. I think Hive Crones are amazing. We're going to see those on the table again for sure. Difficult to kill, super fast, solid shooting, solid combat. I think they'll be I'm putting them in my lists. Harpies, very similar, except their twin Heavy Venom and twin Stranglethorn are now actually just twin linked instead of double shots. So your twin Heavy Venom cannon with what I would imagine is a 150 point at least model gets D3 shots and doesn't really do anything else. So because of that, I think it's not going to be super good. It still does drop spore mines. So you can either set up D3 spore mines at any point that you flew over as long as they're 9 away from the enemy. But it's only D3 spore mines. Alternatively, you can bomb an enemy that you flew over. You get 6d6 every 3 up is immortal. It's fine. I think the Crone is definitely better. And it just has better shooting, better combat. The spore mines are neat, but it's been so toned down that I don't think they're going to do much. All right, we're nearing the end, guys. Home stretch. Spore Assist. It doesn't move, but it also does not have like fortification keyword anywhere, so I don't think it's a fortification anymore. But it just has a move characteristic of dash. It doesn't infiltrate or deep strike either, so you're just putting it in your deployment zone, and it just sits there. That being said, it's actually really good. Toughness 10, 3-up save, 10 wounds, OC 0. It's not holding objectives for you. But it's got the same gun as the drop pod. It's got 5 shots hitting on 4s at strength 5, AP 1 for 2. But with the special rule Hive defenses, every time an enemy unit is set up or ends a normal advance or fallback move within range, so within 24 inches, you can shoot them as if it was your shooting phase. And you can do this up to 4 times per phase. So up to 4 units that walk within range of this thing, they're going to get shot, which is phenomenal. I mean, it's just going to be consistent chip damage. Hilariously enough, I think you could actually put a Spore Assist in a drop pod if you want to set up a kill zone. Like, I don't think this is going to be points efficient at all, but it's certainly meme worthy. If you want to drop 3 drop pods in with 3 Spore Assists all in the middle of the table and say, are you going to step out of your deployment zone? Okay, you're getting shot by 3 Spore Assists. I think that'd be hilarious. Probably terrible, but funny. Alternatively, it can choose not to shoot. I think you probably don't shoot all the time and instead spawn a Mucilid. You just place the Mucilid within 18 of this model, 9 inches away from the enemy. You're just forgoing your 5 shots to do that, but again, you're getting your 5 shots in your opponent's turn. So, yeah, I would do that every time. Just swap out to spawn a Mucilid. Final data sheet. We're there, guys. Oh, second to last data sheet. We got the Psychophage. This is the Tyranid Venom Crawler, as I kind of joke about. Toughness 9, 10 wounds, 3-up save, moves 8 inches, OC 3. It's a monster. It has a ignore cover flamer, 12-inch range, D6 shots, strength 6, AP 1 for 1, and it really likes eating psychers. In combat, it's D6 plus 1 attacks, so super swingy on how many attacks you get, but hitting on 3s, strength 6, AP 1 for 2, funnily enough, anti-psycher 2+ devastating wounds. So if you're hitting a psycher, you're just mortaling the crap out of it. The only thing that makes this guy really good and not just a tech pick against an anti-psycher list is a 5-up Feel No Pain plus an aura of Feel No Pain to all units within 6. Only a 6+, but if you're going for a Gaunt Carpet list, I think you absolutely do that. So Gaunt Carpet with Venomthropes and Psychophage. You heard it here first. Yeah, this guy was previewed already. He's all right. He's fine. Barb Gaunts. These guys are broken. The internet's kind of going crazy about them. Purely because of their ability, Disruption Bombardment. In your shooting phase, after this unit has shot, any infantry unit hit by it, and oddly enough, you can split fire, so this one unit can just shoot a whole bunch of different infantry units, and all of them that they hit are going to be -2 to move, advance, and charge rolls. So, yeah, that's just super good. You're going to slow down infantry to the point where they're just crawling across the table towards you. That's what makes these guys good. I'm going to guess 15 points per model, so a unit of 5 is like 70 points. And I think you take 2 units of 5. They're probably not really doing damage. You are literally just taking them to slow your opponent down to a crawl to where they can't do any of the actions that they want to do. They can't get to objectives. You want 2 units because as soon as your unit shoots, they're then going to get blown apart because they do need line of sight. But that being said, they are T4 with 2 wounds apiece and a 4+ save, which means that in cover, they are literally just Space Marines. So they're not that squishy, but you're probably only taking them in units of 5. I don't see a reason to go up to 10 because you're not doing it for the damage. You're doing it to make guys slow. Nothing to write home about in combat. And OC1, Leadership 8, they're not Synapse. They're not Endless Multitude. You're not bringing these guys back. And yeah, we did it. I think that's like 3 hours. So good job, guys. If you made it through, thank you so much. I'm really excited. I'll probably make a video once we have points about lists. I'm super excited. I've been writing lists already, but obviously I've just been totally guessing on points. So thanks for watching. See you guys next time.